I spent 8 grueling years saving every penny for my dream home, only to watch my sister Jessica walk through it like she already owned the place. The colonial house meant everything to me, proof that I had made it on my own, despite my father's lifelong favoritism toward her. When she stood in my kitchen before our family reunion and announced Dad promised this as my wedding gift, I felt my world freeze. My father just laughed at my shock. "You really think this is your place? You don't belong here," he added cruelly. I said nothing, just pulled out the deed and texted them both, the proof they couldn't deny. If you're watching this from somewhere, your family has tried to take what's rightfully yours, drop a comment below and hit subscribe as I show you how I protected what was mine and found unexpected healing in the process. I grew up in a family where status always trumped substance. My father, Harold, built a successful real estate development company from nothing, something he never let anyone forget. While his business achievements were undeniable, his parenting skills left much to be desired, especially when it came to treating his children equally. From our earliest years, it was clear Jessica was the golden child. She received the newest toys, the most expensive clothes, and most importantly, the bulk of our father's attention and praise. Her ballet recitals were family events that required attendance from distant relatives. My academic award ceremonies were often attended only by my mother, Diana, who tried her best to balance the scales. "Your sister just needs more support," my mother would explain gently when I questioned the disparity. "You're naturally gifted, Zane. Your father shows love differently to each of you." Those explanations never quite healed the wound of watching my father beam with pride at Jessica while giving me nothing more than a distracted nod when I brought home straight A's. The pattern continued through our childhood, Jessica dropping activities when they became challenging, while I pushed through difficulties to prove myself worthy of the attention that never came. When I was 15, everything changed. My mother was diagnosed with aggressive cancer, and within 6 months, she was gone. The one person who had always been in my corner, who had balanced my father's blatant favoritism, was suddenly absent. The house became even more Jessica-centric, with my father pouring all his grief-tinged attention into her every need and achievement. By the time I turned 18, I knew I needed to forge my own path. With my excellent grades and a small inheritance from my maternal grandmother, I secured a scholarship to attend a university across the country. The day I left, my father gave me a perfunctory handshake while helping Jessica plan her weekend shopping trip to New York. "Call if you need anything," he said distractedly, already turning back to Jessica. I smiled tightly. "I will not need anything," I replied. He did not seem to notice the determination in my voice. College was transformative. Free from the shadow of family dynamics, I thrived academically and socially. I worked multiple jobs: barista in the mornings, library assistant in the afternoons, and weekend shifts at a local tech repair shop. My professors took notice of my work ethic, and one connected me with an internship at a promising technology company. Through those 4 years, my contact with family was minimal. I called on holidays, sent obligatory birthday cards, and made brief appearances at major family events. Each time I saw Jessica, she had new designer clothes, a new car, or stories about the exotic vacations our father had funded. I smiled politely while keeping my own achievements close to my chest. After graduating with honors in business administration, I converted my internship into a full-time position. Starting at entry level, I threw myself into my work with the same intensity that had carried me through college. 80-hour weeks became my norm as I climbed the corporate ladder rung by hard-earned rung. By 28, I had moved into a management position with stock options that were beginning to show serious promise. Through it all, I lived modestly, sharing apartments with roommates and driving the same reliable used car I had purchased during college. Every bonus, every raise, went straight into savings with a single goal in mind: buying my own home, free and clear of any family influence or assistance. When I turned 30, I finally felt ready to start looking. My realtor Amanda showed me dozens of properties, but nothing felt right until we pulled up to a beautiful colonial house in a prestigious neighborhood. The moment I walked in, something about the place spoke to me. The solid craftsmanship, the classic design, the way light poured through the windows in the late afternoon. It was built about 20 years ago, Amanda explained, as I ran my hand along the solid wood banister. The developer did a fantastic job with the materials. I froze. Do you know which developer? She checked her notes. Harold Jenkins Construction. Mean anything to you? I almost laughed at the irony. The house that felt like home had been built by my father's company before he expanded into larger commercial projects. Something about that knowledge made the house feel even more right, as if claiming it would be reclaiming a piece of the family legacy on my own terms. The asking price was steep, at $850,000. After aggressive negotiation and pointing out several areas that needed updating, Amanda helped me secure it for $760,000. The day I signed the papers, I felt a surge of pride unlike anything I had experienced before. This house, this achievement, was mine alone. I called my father that evening to share the news, hoping that perhaps this tangible symbol of success might finally earn me some recognition. "I just bought my first house," I said, when he answered, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. "That is nice," he replied, distracted as usual. "Where is it?" When I gave him the address, there was a pause. "That old thing," he finally said. "We build much better houses now. You should have consulted me before wasting your money." I felt the familiar sting of his dismissal, but pushed past it. "Actually, I really love the craftsmanship. The houses your company built back then have real character." "If you say so," he replied. "Jessica just got engaged, by the way. Kyle proposed last weekend. We are planning an engagement party next month." Of course, he immediately pivoted to Jessica news. I congratulated him appropriately, then mentioned I was planning a small family reunion at my new place. "That would be perfect timing," he said suddenly, more interested. "We could announce some of the wedding details then. Jessica will be thrilled." After hanging up, I called my best friend Tyler to vent. "Classic Harold move," Tyler said, after listening to me. "Turning your housewarming into a Jessica celebration. Are you sure you want to invite them at all?" "They are still my family," I replied. "Besides, maybe seeing what I have accomplished on my own will finally change something." Tyler's silence spoke volumes about his doubt, but he simply offered to help with preparations. "Just be careful," he warned before hanging up. "Family gatherings have a way of bringing out old patterns." I had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into preparing the house for the family reunion. I focused on renovating key areas that would make the best impression, updating the kitchen with new quartz countertops, refinishing the hardwood floors in the main living areas, and painting throughout with colors that felt both modern and timeless. Each improvement was carefully considered, not just for my own enjoyment, but with an eye toward finally earning my father's respect. Perhaps seeing the transformation of one of his company's older homes would impress him in a way my other achievements never had. As the day approached, my anxiety built steadily. Tyler and my friend Grace came over regularly to help with preparations, offering both practical assistance and emotional support. "This place looks amazing," Grace reassured me as we arranged furniture in the living room. "Your family will be impressed." Tyler was less optimistic. "Just remember why you bought this house, Zane. For yourself, not for their approval." I nodded, but we both knew that some part of me still craved that parental recognition I had never received. The day before the reunion, I was putting final touches on the guest rooms when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I was surprised to find Jessica standing there with her fiancé Kyle an entire day earlier than expected. Surprise! She squealed, air kissing my cheek before pushing past me into the foyer. We decided to come early to help you set up. Plus, I could not wait to see this place Dad has been talking about. Something about her phrasing made me uneasy, but I welcomed them in, showing them to one of the guest rooms I had prepared. This is, quaint Jessica said, running her finger along the dresser as if checking for dust. You have done a lot with what you had to work with. Kyle at least seemed genuinely impressed. The woodwork in this place is incredible, he commented, examining the crown molding. They really do not make them like this anymore. Jessica rolled her eyes at him before turning back to me. Can I see the master bedroom? I want to get ideas for our new place after the wedding. Reluctantly, I led her upstairs to my bedroom, watching uncomfortably as she opened closets and examined the ensuite bathroom. Throughout the tour, she took photos of every room with her phone, offering critical comments about my decorating choices. You should have consulted an interior designer, she said, frowning at my bookshelf. These pieces do not really work together. I like them, I replied simply. They tell my story. She laughed as if I had said something adorably naive. That is not how proper homes work, Zane. But I guess this is fine for a bachelor pad. The dismissive way she said bachelor pad to describe my beloved home stung, but I bit my tongue. One more day, and the reunion would be over. That evening, after Jessica and Kyle went out for dinner, I received a text from my father saying he would also arrive early in the morning to help prepare. Given that he had never helped prepare for any event in his life, this only increased my unease. I slept poorly that night, plagued by old dreams of trying to gain my father's attention while he turned away. When I came downstairs early the next morning, I found Jessica already in the kitchen speaking quietly on her phone. Yes, the master bath will definitely need a complete remodel, she was saying, but the bones are good. We can make it work. She hung up quickly when she noticed me flashing an overly bright smile. Just talking to my wedding planner, she explained unconvincingly. Coffee. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. My father had arrived looking exactly as he always did. Expensive suit, perfectly groomed salt and pepper hair, the confident bearing of a man accustomed to getting his way. Son, he said with a curt nod, before immediately turning to embrace Jessica. There is my beautiful bride-to-be. Let me see that ring in the natural light. As they cooed over her enormous diamond, I excused myself to finish setting up the dining room. Through the open doorway, I could hear them begin to walk through the house, their voices carrying clearly. The downstairs powder room would make a perfect nursery someday, my father was saying. Once we fix the plumbing issues, and that weird office could be converted to a proper guest suite, Jessica added. Kyle's parents would appreciate their own bathroom when they visit. I froze trying to process what I was hearing. They were discussing my house as if it would soon be hers. Surely I was misinterpreting. I stepped back into the kitchen just as they returned from their tour, forcing a smile. Can I get anyone breakfast before the others arrive? Jessica exchanged a look with my father before turning to me with a smirk that made my blood run cold. Actually, Zane, we need to discuss something, she said, leaning against the kitchen island I had just installed last week. You see, Dad promised this house as my wedding gift. He told me years ago that when I got married, this specific house would be mine. I stared at her in disbelief before turning to my father. What is she talking about? I bought this house. I paid $760,000 for it. My father laughed, the sound cutting through me like a knife. You really think this is your place? You do not belong here, he added with a dismissive wave. This house was always meant for Jessica. I built it with her in mind. The room seemed to tilt around me as decades of favoritism crystallized into this moment of absolute betrayal. Everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed to prove myself worthy, meant nothing to them. In their eyes, even my greatest achievement should rightfully belong to Jessica. For a moment, I felt the familiar urge to retreat, to acquiesce as I had so many times before, when faced with my father's disapproval. But something had changed. This was not a childhood toy or a spot at the dinner table. This was my home purchased with my money earned through my work. Without a word, I walked to my office, opened my safe, and retrieved the property deed and closing documents. As I returned to the kitchen, I could hear Jessica already on the phone with someone discussing paint colors for her new master bedroom. I said nothing, just pulled out the deed, took clear photos of all the legal documents with my name prominently displayed, and texted them both the irrefutable proof of ownership. The sound of Jessica's phone, chiming with my message, cut off her conversation mid-sentence. The silence that followed, as they both looked at their phones, was almost worth the preceding betrayal. Jessica's face flushed red, then drained of color entirely. My father squinted at his screen as if looking at it more closely would somehow change the name on the deed. "This is clearly some kind of mistake." Jessica finally sputtered, her voice rising. "Dad told me years ago that this house would be mine when I got married. Tell him, Dad." My father looked up from his phone, his expression hardening. "You must have tricked the sellers somehow. I specifically told Randall Howard not to sell this property." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. My father had planned to buy the house for Jessica, but had been too late. The seller, Randall Howard, had already accepted my offer through Amanda. "I did not trick anyone," I said calmly. "I made a fair offer through my realtor, and Mr. Howard accepted it. The transaction was completely legitimate, as you can see from the documentation. But you knew I wanted this house," Jessica shrieked, abandoning all pretense. "Dad has been telling me since I was 16 that this would be my wedding present." I looked at her incredulously. "How could I possibly have known that neither of you ever mentioned this house to me before I bought it?" "Because we did not think we needed to," my father interjected, his face reddening with anger. "This house was special. It was never supposed to be sold outside the family." Something in his phrasing caught my attention. "What do you mean, special? You built dozens of houses in this neighborhood. What makes this one different?" My father turned away suddenly, unable to meet my eyes. Jessica looked confused, glancing between us. "Dad, what is he talking about?" The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first reunion guests, but none of us moved to answer it. "Tell her I pressed a new suspicion forming. Why this house specifically?" My father's jaw clenched. "I built this house for your mother," he finally admitted, "before she got sick. It was her design, her vision. She loved colonial architecture. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. This house that had called to me, that had felt like home the moment I walked in, had been designed by my mother. No wonder it resonated with me so deeply." "So, you promised Mom's house to Jessica?" I asked, my voice barely controlled. "The house you built for your wife, you plan to give to your daughter without even mentioning it to your son." The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. "She would have wanted Jessica to have it," my father replied, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. "You have no idea what she would have wanted," I said quietly, "because you never bothered to know either of us the way she did." I moved past them to answer the door, finding my Aunt Patricia and Uncle Stephen on the porch with bright smiles and a casserole dish. Behind them, I could see other relatives approaching up the walkway. "Welcome to my home," I said with a genuine smile, stepping back to let them in. "Please come in." The next hour was surreal. As relatives arrived, Jessica made increasingly desperate attempts to maintain the narrative that the house would soon be hers. My father alternated between stony silence and attempts to pull me aside for private discussions that I politely but firmly declined. When most of the family had assembled in the living room, Jessica clinked her glass for attention, her smile brittle. "Kyle and I are so excited to announce that after our honeymoon, we will be moving into this beautiful house," she proclaimed. "Dad has generously given it to us as a wedding present." The confused murmurs and congratulations were cut short when I stood. "There seems to be some confusion," I said calmly. "This is my house. I purchased it 4 months ago and have the documentation to prove it. While I am delighted to host our family reunion here, I should clarify that I have no plans to move out now or in the future." Jessica's face contorted with rage. He is lying, Dad. Tell them. All eyes turned to my father, who seemed to shrink under the collective gaze of our extended family. There has been a misunderstanding, he mumbled. We can discuss this privately. I think we have had enough private discussions in this family, I replied. Discussions that happen behind certain people's backs. I believe in transparency. I retrieved my laptop and connected it to the living room television, displaying the property records and deed for everyone to see. As you can all see, I am the legal owner of this property. I purchased it with my own money, earned through my own work, without any assistance from anyone in this room. The silence was deafening. Jessica stormed out, Kyle trailing behind her with an apologetic glance back at the assembled family. My father remained rooted in place, his face a mask of fury and embarrassment. It was my mother's brother, Uncle Robert, who finally broke the tension. Your mother would be proud, Zane, he said quietly. She always said you had her determination. My father's head snapped toward him. Do not bring Diana into this. Uncle Robert stood walking to stand beside me. Why not? This was her house too, Harold. The house you promised would always stay in the family, for both your children. The revelation sent a ripple through the room. Clearly, there was more to this story than I had realized. What are you talking about? I asked. Uncle Robert placed a hand on my shoulder. Your mother made your father promise that this house would remain in the family as a legacy for both her children. She specifically wanted you to have a connection to it, Zane. My father's face had gone pale. That is not. She never specified. She did, Uncle Robert insisted. I was there when she made you promise Harold. 2 weeks before she died. She said, Promise me our son will always have a place here. Those were her exact words. The weight of this betrayal, not just of me, but of my mother's dying wish, seemed to ripple through the room. Relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances, some moving to get coats and make early exits. I think I said quietly, this family reunion is over. As people filed out offering awkward goodbyes, I noticed the family had essentially divided. Those who had always benefited from my father's favor followed him and Jessica out the door. Others, particularly my mother's relatives, lingered to offer support and, in some cases, long overdue apologies for their silence over the years. Uncle Robert was the last to leave, pressing something into my hand as he hugged me goodbye. She left this with me, he whispered, for when you were ready. Looking down, I found a small brass key in my palm, its purpose as yet unknown. After everyone had gone, the house felt eerily quiet. I wandered through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes, now that I knew my mother had designed the space. How had I not sensed her presence from the beginning? Perhaps some part of me had recognized her, touched her vision, in the way light filled the rooms, and the proportions felt so perfectly balanced. I turned the small brass key Uncle Robert had given me over in my hand, wondering what it might open. On a hunch, I examined the built-in cabinetry in the living room more closely. In the decorative molding of one panel, I found a tiny keyhole nearly invisible unless you knew to look for it. The key fit perfectly, turning with a soft click. Inside the hidden compartment was a small wooden box containing photographs I had never seen before. My mother, young and radiant, standing in this very house during its construction. In one, she had her arms spread wide in the empty frame of what would become the living room window, her smile luminous. On the back, written in her flowing script, where I will watch my children grow. There were dozens more, my mother pointing at blueprints, selecting fixtures, planting the oak tree that now stood tall in the backyard. The final photo in the stack showed her holding me as an infant, Jessica as a toddler beside her, all of us, in the unfinished living room, my legacy she had written on the back. I sat on the floor, surrounded by these treasures, tears flowing freely. All these years I had been searching for connection, for belonging, never knowing that my mother had created this space with both her children in mind. My father's betrayal of that vision felt even more profound now. In the days that followed, I took several legal precautions. I contacted my attorney to document the situation and ensure there could be no challenges to my ownership. I installed a security system after finding Jessica parked outside one evening just watching the house. I even received a threatening letter from my father claiming I had somehow manipulated the sale, which my attorney quickly addressed with a cease and desist response. But even as I defended my legal rights to the house, I found myself more interested in exploring its emotional connection to my mother. Uncle Robert visited several times, bringing more of my mother's possessions he had saved from my father's purge after her death: journals, sketchbooks, even some of her favorite books that had mysteriously disappeared from our family home years ago. "She always worried about you," he told me during one visit. "She knew Jessica would be fine. She had your father wrapped around her finger. But you were sensitive like Diana. She wanted to make sure you had a place in the world." Through her journals, I discovered a mother I had never fully known, a woman with dreams and fears who had loved both her children fiercely while recognizing their different needs. She had seen the same favoritism I experienced, had fought against it in ways I never realized, and had ultimately tried to ensure I would have this connection to her after she was gone. Tyler and Grace were instrumental in helping me process this emotional upheaval. They spent weekends helping me incorporate some of my mother's design sketches into my renovation plans, honoring her vision while making the space my own. "You know," Tyler said one evening as we finished installing bookshelves based on my mother's designs, "this whole mess with your family actually gave you something precious." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You found your mother again," he said simply. "And in the process, you finally stood up for yourself against your father and sister." He was right. For all the pain of the confrontation, I had gained something invaluable. Not just the house itself, but a connection to my mother I had thought lost forever, and the experience of finally breaking the pattern of acquiescence that had defined so much of my life. To my surprise, about 6 months after the disastrous family reunion, I received a letter from Jessica. Unlike the hostile messages that had preceded it, this one seemed different from the first line I found Mom's journals in Dad's attic. She wrote, "I had no idea how things really were. I am sorry, Zane." She went on to explain that she had discovered our mother's writings about her hopes for both her children, her concerns about our father's favoritism, and specifically her wish that the house she designed would someday be a place where both her children could find connection to her. I always thought I was entitled to everything Jessica admitted in her letter. Dad made me believe that. But Mom wanted something different for us both. It was not a complete reconciliation. Too much had happened for that, but it was a starting point. We met for coffee a week later, our first civil conversation in months. She had broken off her engagement to Kyle, was seeing a therapist, and had even moved out of our father's financial support for the first time in her life. My father remained distant, his pride too wounded to acknowledge his betrayal of my mother's wishes. Some of the extended family had begun to reach out, though particularly as the truth about the house's history spread through family channels. As for me, I continued to make the house my own, while honoring the elements my mother had loved. The hidden compartment in the living room now displayed her photographs prominently, no longer a secret but a celebration of her vision. My career continued to flourish, and I found myself hosting small gatherings of friends and supportive family members who appreciated the home for what it was, not a status symbol, but a sanctuary. The journey had been painful, but it had led me to a place of greater understanding of my mother, my family dynamics, and most importantly, myself. I no longer needed my father's approval to validate my achievements. I had created my own success, my own home, and ultimately my own sense of family among those who truly supported me. Sometimes standing your ground quietly with dignity and evidence, rather than shouting and accusations, is the most powerful response to those who try to take what is rightfully yours. And sometimes, what you fight to keep gives you more than you ever imagined possible. Have you ever had to stand up for something that was rightfully yours? Drop a comment below and let me know how you handled it. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family challenges and personal triumph. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to protect what is theirs. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the family we choose understands us better than the family we are born into.